Before the frontier had roads, before Kentucky had towns, there was only forest, endless forest, a green ocean stretching beyond the edge of maps, and somewhere inside it moved one man, not a general, not a president, not a king, a hunter in a coonskin cap carrying a long rifle through the dark timber. To some, he became America's first frontier hero. To others, he was the beginning of the land rush that swallowed the wilderness whole. But the real story of Daniel Boone was stranger than the legend painted onto lunchboxes and old television screens. Because Boone did not conquer the wilderness, he disappeared into it. And every time civilization caught up to him, he kept walking farther west. This is the story of the man who opened the American frontier while spending his life trying to escape it. Daniel Boone entered the world in 1734 inside a rough log cabin in the colony of Pennsylvania. The edge of settlement was still fragile then. Beyond the farms and scattered villages waited thick wilderness where wolves, bears, and silence ruled the land. His family were Quakers, people who valued peace and simplicity, but Boone felt the pull of the forest more strongly than the pull of church walls. While other boys learned trades, Boone vanished into the woods with a rifle nearly as tall as he was. He became a hunter before he became a man. The frontier hardened people quickly. Winters were brutal. Food could vanish overnight. Native tribes defended their lands fiercely against encroaching settlers. Every journey beyond the settlements carried the possibility of never returning. But Boone loved it. The deeper the wilderness stretched, the more alive he felt. Neighbors later recalled how Boone could move silently through forests for days at a time, navigating rivers and mountains by instinct alone. He studied animal tracks like language written into mud and snow. By his teenage years, he already possessed the skills that would make him legendary. Yet even then, something restless lived inside him. Civilization always felt temporary to Boone. Fences annoyed him. Crowded towns suffocated him. And as the colonies grew larger, the wilderness he loved began shrinking around him. So he started looking west, toward the mountains, toward Kentucky, toward a place few colonists dared to enter. By the late 1760s, stories drifted eastward about a vast wilderness beyond the Appalachian Mountains. Hunters described endless, fertile valleys filled with buffalo, elk, and untouched forests. The region was called Kentucky. To settlers, it sounded like paradise. To native tribes, including the Shawnee and Cherokee, it was sacred hunting ground. Most colonists feared entering it. The trails were dangerous, and war parties moved silently through the forests. Men vanished there. Entire expeditions disappeared without explanation. That danger only drew Boone closer. In 1769, Boone joined a small hunting expedition through the narrow mountain passage, later known as the Cumberland Gap. The route sliced through towering wilderness like a hidden doorway into another world. What Boone found stunned him. Kentucky was immense. Rivers cut through endless valleys untouched by colonial settlement. Herds of buffalo thundered across open meadows. Dense forests stretched farther than the eye could see. Boone reportedly called it the second paradise. But paradise came with bloodshed. The hunting party was stalked constantly. Supplies were stolen. Several men were killed. Boone himself was captured briefly by Shawnee warriors before escaping back into the wilderness. Most men would have fled east forever. Boone kept returning, again and again. Each journey pushed deeper into the frontier, until his name became tied permanently to the wilderness itself. Around campfires across the colonies, stories spread of the quiet woodsman who could survive anywhere. And soon, Boone would carve a road into Kentucky that thousands would follow, a road called the Wilderness Road. In 1775, a land company hired Daniel Boone to blaze a trail through the Cumberland Gap into Kentucky. It sounded simple on paper. In reality, it meant cutting a road through nearly 200 miles of unforgiving wilderness while under constant threat of attack. Boone led a team of axemen into the forest. Trees crashed endlessly beneath iron blades as the men hacked through mountains, rivers, and thick underbrush. Every mile became a battle against terrain itself. Then came the attacks. Native warriors fought fiercely to stop settlers from flooding into Kentucky. Several of Boone's men were killed during ambushes along the trail. Boone's own son narrowly survived one encounter. The wilderness became a war zone, where every shadow carried danger. Still, the road continued westward. By the time Boone finished, the Wilderness Road had become one of the most important migration routes in American history. Within years, tens of thousands of settlers poured through the gap into Kentucky. Cabins rose where forests once stood untouched. Fields replaced buffalo trails. Entire towns appeared in land Boone once crossed alone. Ironically, the road that made Boone famous also destroyed the solitude he loved. Civilization followed directly behind him like a relentless tide. Boone founded the settlement of Boonesborough, but even there, danger never vanished. During the Revolutionary War, native raids intensified across the frontier. Families lived behind wooden walls, expecting attacks at any moment. And Boone himself soon faced one of the strangest chapters of his entire life. He was captured, again. But this time, he stayed. In 1778, while gathering salt for the settlement at Boonesborough, Daniel Boone and several companions were captured by Shawnee warriors. Everyone expected Boone to die. Instead, something unexpected happened. The Shawnee adopted him into their tribe. Boone was taken north to a Shawnee village where he underwent rituals transforming him from prisoner into family. He was given new clothing, new responsibilities, and reportedly treated with surprising respect. Boone later described the experience with unusual admiration rather than hatred. For months, he lived among the Shawnee, hunting and traveling beside the very people settlers called enemies. But Boone also understood their plans. The Shawnee intended to launch a major attack against Boonesborough. Realizing the settlement could be destroyed, Boone escaped and raced nearly 160 miles through the wilderness to warn the fort. The settlers prepared just in time. When the attack finally came, Boonesborough held. Yet, Boone's reputation suffered afterward. Some settlers questioned why he had lived so comfortably among the Shawnee. Rumors spread that perhaps Boone had become too close to them. Frontier politics were harsh, suspicious, and often cruel. The truth was more complicated. Boone understood the frontier better than most men alive. He knew Kentucky was not empty land waiting for settlement. It already belonged to nations who had hunted and fought there for generations. But the tide of expansion could no longer be stopped, and Boone, willingly or not, had helped unleash it. As decades passed, the legend of Daniel Boone grew larger than the man himself. Stories exaggerated his adventures until Boone became almost mythical. Paintings showed him wearing buckskin and staring nobly into sunsets. Dime novels transformed him into a frontier superhero. But the real Boone remained restless. Kentucky became crowded. Land disputes consumed settlers. Lawyers, politicians, and speculators flooded the frontier. Boone hated nearly all of it. He once lost thousands of acres because of complicated land claims and legal confusion he barely understood. So he did what he always did. He moved farther west. First into what is now West Virginia, then later beyond the Mississippi River into Spanish-controlled Missouri Territory. Even in old age, Boone continued hunting through forests for weeks at a time. Visitors described an aging frontiersman still more comfortable beneath trees than inside homes. Civilization followed him endlessly, and Boone responded by retreating deeper into wilderness. It became almost tragic. The very success of America's expansion destroyed the untamed frontier Boone loved most. Forests disappeared, settlements spread, the silence faded, and the old hunter who helped open the West slowly became a relic of a vanishing world. Yet Boone never truly stopped searching for that older America, the one untouched by roads, the one beyond the maps. Daniel Boone died in 1820 at the age of 85. By then, the United States had transformed dramatically. The frontier he once explored alone now carried towns, farms, ferries, and growing cities. The wilderness corridor Boone helped carve into Kentucky had become a highway of expansion, pushing Americans farther west every year. But almost immediately, myth swallowed reality. Writers turned Boone into the symbol of the American frontier itself. Generations grew up imagining him as the fearless woodsman standing between civilization and wilderness, with rifle in hand and mountains behind him. Yet the real Boone was quieter than the legend. He was not obsessed with fame. He was not driven by conquest. In many ways, he seemed deeply uncomfortable with the society forming around him. Boone loved movement more than ownership, forests more than settlements. That contradiction makes him fascinating even now. Because Boone helped create a future he did not entirely want, the roads he opened brought thousands westward, but they also erased the wilderness he cherished and devastated native nations already living there. His story became woven into the larger story of American expansion, ambition, survival, discovery, violence, and loss, intertwined together beneath the shadow of the frontier. Today, Boone survives somewhere between history and folklore, part man, part myth, a lonely figure walking west through dark timber while civilization follows behind him like distant thunder. And somewhere beyond the trees, the wilderness closes again.